Every day we have a conversation with ourselves. It's constant, unfiltered, and unrelenting. And whether we realize it or not, those conversations shape everything. The way we see the world, the way we see others, and most importantly, the way we see ourselves. Think about it. Two people can face the same challenge, but their internal dialogue will determine their experience. One person might say, "I knew I wasn't good enough for this," while the other says, "This is tough, but I'll figure it out." Same situation, completely different realities. The difference? The story they tell themselves. We don't see the world as it is. We see the world through the lens of the stories we repeat in our minds. If you keep telling yourself that you're not capable, that you're not ready, that you don't belong, eventually you'll believe it. And once you believe it, you'll act accordingly. You'll hold back. You'll hesitate. You'll take fewer risks, avoiding discomfort at all costs. Not because you aren't capable, but because you've convinced yourself that you aren't. But here's the fascinating part. Those stories aren't always true. They aren't facts. They're narratives. Narratives built from past experiences, fears, and insecurities. Maybe a teacher told you once that you weren't smart enough. Maybe you failed at something years ago and now you've decided that failure defines you. Maybe you've been comparing yourself to people who seem to have it all figured out and now you believe you'll never measure up. But those are just fragments of a much bigger picture. They aren't the whole truth. They are simply the stories you've chosen to believe. The good news? Stories can be rewritten. The same way we internalize negative beliefs, we can reprogram ourselves with new, empowering narratives. It starts with awareness. Recognizing the moments when we're feeding ourselves a limiting story, catching the thought when it arises and questioning it. Is this really true, or is this just something I've been telling myself? Because once we change the story, we change everything. We talk to ourselves more than we talk to anyone else. From the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep, there's a constant stream of thoughts running through our minds. Some are fleeting, others stick, some push us forward, others hold us back. And the most important thing to understand is this: the words we use with ourselves matter. They dictate how we feel, how we act, and ultimately what we believe we're capable of achieving. Imagine you're about to take on a big challenge. Maybe it's a job interview, a presentation, or an opportunity that pushes you beyond your comfort zone. The words you choose in that moment can determine your entire experience. If you say to yourself, "I'm going to mess this up," your brain immediately starts searching for proof to confirm that belief. Your body follows, your shoulders tense, your breath shortens, your confidence shrinks. Not because you aren't capable, but because you've wired yourself to expect failure. But what if, instead, you told yourself, "I'm ready for this. I've prepared. I'm capable"? The challenge remains the same, but now your mind is working for you rather than against you. You stand taller. Your breath steadies. You tap into the confidence that was always there, buried beneath layers of doubt. The way we frame our thoughts changes the way we experience reality. Words like "I can't" reinforce limitation. Words like "I haven't figured it out yet" reinforce growth. There's a subtle but powerful difference between saying "I'm terrible at this" and saying "I'm learning how to get better." The first one closes the door, the second one keeps it open. The first one tells your brain to stop trying. The second one tells your brain to keep going. Most of us don't realize how often we speak to ourselves in ways we'd never speak to a friend. If someone you cared about said, "I don't think I'm good enough," you'd never respond with, "Yeah, you're right, you should probably quit." You'd remind them of their strengths, their potential, their past successes. You'd encourage them to keep going. So why do we speak to ourselves any differently? Our internal dialogue is a script that plays on repeat. And the more we reinforce a certain narrative, the more it becomes our reality. But just like any habit, it can be changed. It starts by becoming aware of the words we use, by catching ourselves when we slip into negativity and making a conscious effort to reframe. It's not about ignoring challenges or pretending everything is easy. It's about choosing language that helps us grow instead of language that keeps us stuck. Because every time we shift our internal dialogue, we shift what we believe is possible. Most of us go through life focusing on what we need to do. We set goals, create to-do lists, and structure our days around tasks and responsibilities. We say, I need to work harder, I should exercise more, I have to be more confident. And yet, despite knowing what we need to do, we often struggle to follow through. We procrastinate, we lose motivation, we feel stuck. But the real question isn't what, it's why. Why do you want to work harder? Why do you want to be more confident? Why does any of it matter to you? When we start with what, we rely on willpower. And willpower fades. It's like trying to push a boulder uphill. It requires constant effort, and the moment we stop pushing, it rolls back down. But when we start with why, we tap into something deeper. We create momentum that sustains itself. We turn discipline into purpose. Look at the most successful people in any field. Athletes, leaders, entrepreneurs. What separates them isn't just talent or intelligence. It's the clarity of their why. A great athlete doesn't wake up at 4 a.m. every morning just to train. They do it because they are driven by something bigger. Maybe they want to prove to themselves that they can be the best. Maybe they want to inspire others. Maybe they have something to prove to the world. But training, the what, is secondary. The why is what keeps them going when it gets tough. Now think about the things you struggle with. Maybe you've been trying to develop a new habit, but you keep falling off track. Maybe you set goals, but you don't feel connected to them. Chances are it's not because you lack discipline, it's because the why behind it isn't strong enough. If your reason for going to the gym is simply because I should, it's easy to skip a workout. But if your reason is because I want to be strong enough to play with my kids when I'm older, suddenly it has weight. Suddenly it's bigger than the task itself. Companies work the same way. There are countless businesses that sell similar products, yet only a few stand out. The companies that lead, the ones we admire, aren't just focused on what they do, they start with why. Apple doesn't just make computers. Tesla doesn't just make cars. Their why, innovation, challenging the status quo, building a better future, is what makes people believe in them. It's what inspires loyalty. It's what makes them more than just another company. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The same is true for our own lives. The people who inspire us, leaders, mentors, visionaries, aren't just defined by their actions. They are defined by the reason behind those actions. When we operate without a clear why, we go through the motions. We do what's expected, we follow routines, but we feel unfulfilled. We wonder why success doesn't feel as meaningful as we thought it would. We achieve goals, but they don't change us. But when we define our why, everything shifts. Our actions become intentional. Our work becomes meaningful. We stop chasing motivation and start fueling ourselves with something that lasts. Because at the end of the day, what we do will always change, but why we do it, that's what defines us. Think about your best friend. Think about someone you truly care about, someone whose success and happiness matter to you. Now imagine they come to you after a rough day, feeling defeated. Maybe they say, I messed up. I don't think I'm good enough. I keep failing. How would you respond? Would you agree with them? Would you say, yeah, you're right, you should probably give up? Of course not. You'd remind them of their strengths. You'd tell them that one mistake doesn't define them. You'd help them see the bigger picture. You'd encourage them to keep going because you see their potential even when they don't. Now ask yourself this: Why don't we speak to ourselves the same way? Most of us are our own worst critics. We talk to ourselves in ways we would never talk to someone we love. When we make a mistake, we don't just acknowledge it. We punish ourselves for it. When we feel insecure, we don't offer reassurance, we reinforce the doubt. We tell ourselves we're not good enough, not smart enough, not capable enough. And the more we repeat those words, the more we believe them. But here's the truth. If we spoke to our friends the way we speak to ourselves, we wouldn't have many friends left. Encouragement isn't just something we give to others. It's something we need to give to ourselves. Because when we treat ourselves with kindness, we don't just feel better, we perform better. Research shows that self-compassion leads to greater resilience, stronger motivation, and higher levels of confidence. It's not about ignoring mistakes or pretending everything is fine. It's about recognizing that failure is part of the process, that growth takes time, and that we are always learning. Think about the last time you failed at something. Maybe you bombed a presentation, missed a deadline, or said something you regret. What was your immediate reaction? Did you say, "That was a learning experience," or did you say, "I'm so stupid, I always mess things up"? The words we use with ourselves shape the way we see ourselves. If you constantly tell yourself that you're not good enough, your brain will look for evidence to confirm that belief. But if you tell yourself, "I'm learning, I'm growing, and I'll get better," your brain will start believing that too. Imagine if, for just 3 days, you made a conscious effort to speak to yourself like you would a best friend. Imagine replacing self-criticism with self-encouragement. Instead of saying, "I can't do this," say, "This is tough, but I'll figure it out." Instead of saying, "I'm not good enough," say, "I am capable and I'm improving every day." Instead of focusing on what went wrong, remind yourself of what you've done right. Because here's the thing, growth isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, trying again, and believing in yourself, especially when it's hard. And the words you choose will either push you forward or hold you back. We all have a script running in our heads, a story we tell ourselves about who we are, what we're capable of, and what's possible for us. And that script, whether we realize it or not, determines how we experience life. If your script says, "I'm not smart enough," you'll hesitate to take risks. If your script says, "I always mess things up," you'll avoid opportunities where you might fail. If your script says, "I'm just not the kind of person who succeeds," you'll find reasons to stay where you are. Not because you're actually incapable, but because your mind will always work to prove your script right. The human brain is wired for consistency. It likes familiar patterns. So when you tell yourself a story, whether it's empowering or limiting, your brain will filter reality to match that story. It will notice things that reinforce your beliefs and ignore things that contradict them. If your script says, "Nobody likes me," you'll focus on the one time someone ignored your message instead of the 5 times someone smiled at you. If your script says, "I'll never get ahead," you'll fixate on every setback and overlook the progress you've made. But here's the thing, that script isn't set in stone. It was written over time, by past experiences, by things people said to you, by fears, by insecurities. And because it was written, it can be rewritten. Think about this. If your life was a movie and your internal dialogue was the narrator, what kind of story would it be telling? Is it a story of someone who is stuck and powerless? Or is it a story of someone who is learning, growing, and capable of change? Because the moment you change the narration, the story itself starts to change. A simple shift in language can alter the trajectory of your actions. Instead of saying, "I can't do this," try, "I haven't figured it out yet." Instead of saying, "I always fail," try, "I learn from every setback." Instead of saying, "I don't belong here," try, "I'm growing into this space." These aren't just motivational phrases, they are rewiring techniques. They interrupt the old script and introduce a new one. It doesn't mean ignoring challenges. It doesn't mean pretending everything is easy. It means recognizing that the way you frame a situation affects how you respond to it. If you believe you are capable, you will act accordingly. If you believe you are stuck, you won't even try. Think about someone you admire, someone who has achieved something meaningful. Do you think their script said, "I'm not good enough every day"? No. At some point, they had to change their internal dialogue. They had to stop telling themselves the story of limitation and start telling themselves the story of possibility. And the best part? You don't have to rewrite the entire script overnight. You just have to change one line at a time. Because every small shift in language leads to a shift in action. And every shift in action leads to a different outcome. We often believe that big changes require big actions. If we want to transform our health, we think we need to overhaul our entire diet and spend hours at the gym. If we want to advance in our career, we assume we need a drastic move, quitting our job, going back to school, or making some grand gesture. If we want to build confidence, we believe we have to suddenly become fearless overnight. And because these big changes feel overwhelming, we hesitate. We wait. We tell ourselves we'll start when we have more time, more energy, more motivation. But days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and before we know it, nothing has changed. Not because we're incapable, but because we set the bar so high that we never even take the first step. But here's what most people don't realize. It's not the massive changes that create the biggest impact. It's the micro changes, the small, consistent adjustments that, over time, lead to exponential results. Think about compound interest. If you invest a little money every day, at first, it seems insignificant. A few dollars here, a few dollars there, hardly noticeable. But over time, those small contributions add up. They compound. And years later, what once seemed like tiny, inconsequential steps have turned into something significant. The same principle applies to our habits, our mindset, and our growth. Every time you make a small choice, one that seems almost too small to matter, you are shaping the trajectory of your future. If you want to be healthier, don't start by trying to overhaul your entire diet. Start by drinking one more glass of water a day. Start by taking a 5-minute walk. Start by adding one extra serving of vegetables to your plate. None of these actions feel life-changing in the moment, but do them consistently and suddenly your body starts to feel different. Your energy improves, your mindset shifts, and before you know it, you're living in a reality that looks nothing like where you started. If you want to be more confident, don't wait for a massive breakthrough. Start by changing the way you speak to yourself. Start by standing a little taller when you walk into a room. Start by making eye contact for just a second longer. These seem like micro changes, but over time, they rewire your brain. They create a new baseline for how you see yourself, and the more you practice them, the more natural they become. If you want to learn something new, don't overwhelm yourself with a huge, unrealistic study plan. Start with 5 minutes a day. Read one article, watch one video, write down one thought. It won't feel like much at first, but the consistency compounds. One day, you'll look back and realize you've built a skill that once felt impossible. The problem isn't that we're incapable of change. The problem is that we convince ourselves that change has to be massive in order to matter. We wait for the perfect moment to make a big move, not realizing that the real transformation happens in the small moments. Micro changes don't just add up, they multiply. One small action leads to another. One new habit triggers a shift in identity, and before you know it, what once seemed impossible is now second nature. Fear and excitement feel like opposites. One holds us back, the other propels us forward. One paralyzes us, the other energizes us. One makes us want to run away, the other makes us lean in. But what if I told you that At a biological level, fear and excitement are almost identical. That your brain, your body, doesn't actually know the difference. Think about the last time you were truly afraid. Maybe you had to give a big presentation, take a major risk, or step into an unfamiliar situation. Your heart started pounding, your hands got clammy, your breath became shallow, your stomach felt like it was in knots. Now, think about the last time you were excited. Maybe you were about to go on a dream vacation, start a new project, or try something you'd been looking forward to. What happened? Your heart started pounding, your hands got clammy, your breath became shallow, your stomach felt like it was in knots. The physiological response is the same. The only difference? The story you tell yourself about what's happening. Fear and excitement are both heightened states of arousal. They both activate the sympathetic nervous system, which prepares the body for action. The only reason fear feels like fear and excitement feels like excitement is because of the label we assign to the sensation. When we interpret a pounding heart as danger, we call it fear. When we interpret it as anticipation, we call it excitement. This is why two people can experience the same situation in completely different ways. One person steps onto a stage and thinks, "What if I fail?" Their brain translates the sensation as fear. Another person steps onto the same stage and thinks, "This is my moment." Their brain translates the sensation as excitement. The situation hasn't changed. The only difference is the perception. Here's the good news. Since fear and excitement are so closely linked, we have the power to shift one into the other. We can take that nervous energy and reframe it. Instead of saying, "I'm terrified," we can say, "I'm excited." Instead of saying, "I'm not ready," we can say, "This is an opportunity." This isn't just a mental trick, it's neuroscience. Studies have shown that when people actively reframe fear as excitement, their performance improves. Their anxiety levels drop. They feel more confident, more in control. The key isn't to suppress fear, it's to redirect it. Because fear isn't always a bad thing. Fear is just energy. And energy can be channeled. Every time you feel your heart racing, your palms sweating, your breath quickening, you have a choice. You can let it shut you down, or you can let it fuel you. You can say, "This means I'm in danger," or you can say, "This means I'm alive." This is why the greatest athletes, performers, and leaders don't try to eliminate nerves. They use them. They feel the same sensations as everyone else, but instead of letting them create doubt, they let them create momentum. They understand that the body's response is neutral. It's the mind that decides whether it's fear or excitement. And once you understand that, everything changes. The moments that used to intimidate you become the moments that energize you. The situations that used to scare you become the situations that excite you. The fear that used to hold you back becomes the very thing that pushes you forward. Every day, whether we realize it or not, we tell the world how to treat us, not with our words, not with our actions alone, but with the way we see ourselves, the way we carry ourselves, the way we walk into a room, the way we speak, the way we respond to challenges. If you see yourself as small, the world will reflect that back to you. If you see yourself as incapable, people will assume that's true. If you believe you are unworthy, you will unconsciously allow others to treat you as if you are. Not because the world is out to get you, but because people mirror the energy you project. Think about the people who seem to command attention the moment they walk in. They don't have to say a word. There's just something about them. They aren't necessarily the loudest or the most charismatic, but they move with certainty. They exude confidence. And because they believe in themselves, others believe in them too. Now think about the opposite. The person who blends into the background, not because they lack talent, but because they don't fully believe in their own value. They hesitate, they second-guess themselves, they shrink, and the world responds accordingly. The truth is, people take cues from you. If you act like you don't belong, people will question whether you do. If you carry yourself with doubt, people will sense that doubt. But if you own your space, if you believe deep down that you have something to offer, the world will respond in kind. This isn't about arrogance. It's not about pretending to be something you're not. It's about understanding that the way you see yourself sets the standard for how others see you. If you think you're unworthy of success, you'll unconsciously sabotage opportunities. If you believe you're not good enough, you'll hesitate to take chances, and the world will pass those chances on to someone else. But if you see yourself as capable, as deserving, as someone with value, you will naturally move through the world in a way that demands respect, not through force, but through presence. And here's what's even more powerful. When you change how you see yourself, you don't just change how the world treats you, you change what you attract. The relationships you form, the opportunities that come your way, the way people engage with you. It's why two people with the same level of talent can have completely different outcomes. One steps forward with quiet confidence and doors open. The other holds back in self-doubt and doors remain closed. Not because one is better, but because one believes they belong. And belief is everything. Because the world is watching. It's picking up on your cues. It's responding to your energy. And it will see you exactly as you see yourself. For 3 days, just 3 days, commit to changing the way you speak to yourself. Catch the self-doubt before it takes root. Interrupt the criticism before it turns into belief. When you hear that voice telling you you're not good enough, pause. Reframe it. Replace it with something empowering. Because the words you repeat to yourself are not just words, they are instructions. They tell your brain what to believe. They shape the actions you take, and ultimately, they define the life you create. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all figured out. But if you can shift your internal dialogue, if you can speak to yourself with the same kindness, encouragement, and belief that you would offer a best friend, you will feel the difference. You will see the difference. And most importantly, you will become the difference. 3 days. That's all it takes to begin rewriting the script. And once you start, you may never want to go back.